Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to Sister Wives with Mary Jane K. Today, I'll be breaking down Seeking Sister Wife, Season 4, Episode 4, Three's a Crowd. The episode starts with the Epps family. Marcus got back from his amazing picnic with Bina, and it got Marcus to thinking how everyone feels about sex. Marcus asks India a question. He wants to make sure she is okay with Bina coming to their house and meeting them. And he tells India he knows they discuss timing as far as sex, when it's appropriate for Marcus to have sex with the women that he is dating, since of course that's his priority, when Marcus gets to have sex. Not how his wives feel or how his kids feel or how it might forever change the family dynamic. All of that is secondary to when Marcus gets to stick it in. Marcus wants to be sure that India heard what he was saying last night as far as wanting to have sex when he feels that it's right. India explains to Marcus she heard what he was saying, but they aren't on the same page regarding when sex should happen. Marcus says he wants sex with the women that he is dating to be organic, just as it would be if he were a single man dating someone. He says it can't be organic if in the moment when sex happens, he has to stop and make a call. India disagrees. Marcus gives India an example. He uses the example of he and her. He says when India was in that dating phase, she wanted to have sex straight out of the gate. And that's what they did. India says the comparison is null and void because Marcus said himself he was a single man dating a single woman. So when they got together, they did the deed. But Bina is a single woman dating a man who has a wife and a fiance and kids. India says once they have all established that this is going to be something that they take seriously, then sex is okay. She says it doesn't matter if Marcus knows this is the one. If they don't think it's the one, it's vetoed. India tells Marcus she isn't comfortable with the fact that after one date, Marcus wants to get cleared to have sex. Marcus disagrees. He wants India to not be telling him when or where he can have sex at all. Marcus says there is no reason why India should have an issue with what Bina does individually with him, unless there's a deeper issue, and that's why. India says there doesn't have to be a deeper issue. Marcus is getting frustrated and he tells India when she dated him they had sex. And India tells Marcus he keeps going back to that same point that she and him had sex in the beginning. And India feels it's not the same thing because Marcus was separated and single. And India was single herself back then. India insists there is no deeper issue. Marcus insists that India has a deeper issue with Bina. She hasn't even met Bina yet to have a deeper issue with her. India tells Marcus that she is okay with them dating, but she isn't okay with clearing them for sex right now. In my opinion, Marcus's main concern is his dick and being able to do whatever he likes with whoever he wants, as if he's single just for his own self-interest. It's about sex and lust and womanizing and ego, and it's about Marcus having his cake and eating it too. India was sold on polygamy by Marcus, saying it's about structuring the family a specific way, and I don't think that her or Taryn are actually interested in the lifestyle at all. But they are foolish and they both love this idiot and they created a family of sorts, so they live with it. India knows for Marcus, this is about him doing what he wants with women, and she is tolerant of adding to the family in a disciplined way. And so she wants sex to come into play once all of the wives and Marcus have come to the point where they all agree to wanting the potential third wife in the family. She knows for Marcus it's about sex, and so she wants boundaries, and Marcus wants her to accept him sticking his disgusting dick wherever he likes, whenever he likes, with zero boundaries or rules, and with no respect for his other wives or family, only serving his own needs over everyone else's. Never, ever trust a politician. Next up are the Foleys of Eastern Texas. Steve and Brenda just got back from a cruise with Steve's parents in the Caribbean. Steve's parents know about Brenda and Steve's relationship with April. They're private people, so they tell Steve to do what makes him happy. It's been 2 weeks since they have seen April, but before the cruise, they had a date night with April at the winery. Brenda feels that since that winery date, the communication has been distant between she and April. Brenda doesn't know why. Steve touched base with April this morning, and Steve is going to ask April out so the three of them can hang out and have a casual talk. Brenda says there's a lot to talk about, and she's frustrated with April. Brenda spent a lot of time being open with April so April could feel that she has somebody here. And Brenda feels April shuts her out when she is in the relationship as well. Brenda says it's a struggle for April to open up in her communication. Steve says it's also that she has only had one serious relationship in her past. She is starting out at ground zero, not only in this relationship, but in relationships in general, Steve says. Brenda says, in the beginning of coming into an established marriage, it's scary because you don't want to cross any boundaries or upset either one or feel like one person is more important than the other. Brenda says in the first relationship when Steve was married to his first wife and Brenda came in as the second, it was very welcoming for her. So she tries to be welcoming with April. Brenda says if it's important to April, she will make time and try to connect with that person. And Brenda feels April is very one-sided. Steve is concerned that April and Brenda's relationship isn't working, but he thinks no matter what the challenge is, he doesn't want April to go away. He still wants April to be a part of their family, even if there are things that they have to work on. Brenda sighs. She looks like she is holding back tears during this scene. Steve says they all have to get better at communicating with each other. He says it doesn't come natural for a lot of people, but if April wants to, they will work on this with her. He asks Brenda, right? At this point, Brenda gets up and she tells Steve she can't do this. She is in tears and frustrated, and she says she doesn't know what to say about April. It's just annoying that she wants a friend, and April can't be there for her when she needs her. Yet April can easily go to Steve and talk to him anytime. Brenda says they spent so much time with just she and April on their own by themselves when Steve is traveling. And Brenda has talked to April and she tells her that this is what she's looking for. This is what she needs. But April's priorities are different than what Brenda is looking for. Brenda is crying in the truck and Steve goes to check on her. And Brenda doesn't want to cry on camera. Steve tells Brenda these are true feelings, and that is one of the most difficult aspects of this type of relationship, that emotional connection. Brenda says she puts so much of herself out there and she doesn't get anything back. In the end, she just feels empty. Brenda tells Steve she thinks so much about April and what she feels and what she experiences and making April feel comfortable, and it's just... Steve asks Brenda if April is ready to hear this from them. Brenda says she doesn't want to have a heavy conversation with April, and Steve says they need to have it because it hurts them to not have this conversation. Brenda doesn't want to bring down the mood and the fun. Brenda says if they get along, they have fun. Steve tells Brenda that's superficial. They need to have these conversations. Brenda says she knows she puts people's feelings ahead of hers and she keeps her feelings bottled up and she doesn't have anyone to talk to. So it's hard because she feels like she is alone. She says there are more people in the relationship, but she still feels so alone, in tears. I think Steve is very into April, but at the same time, he does care that his wife is happy. And I think deep down, Brenda just would prefer monogamy. She feels alone because inevitably, the sister wife isn't there to be her best friend as a priority. The sister wife is there for Steve mainly as a priority. And the sister wife is taking Steve from her. Deep down, Brenda prefers monogamy, and she says she wants a close friend and companionship from a sister wife. She doesn't want to feel isolated and alone and like a third wheel. So if she tolerates the lifestyle, I think it's very important to Brenda that she feels deeply connected and supported by the other woman. But deep down, I think she really wants and prefers monogamy, and this whole thing is absolutely breaking her heart. If Brenda insisted on wanting monogamy, would Steve leave her, or would he stay and be content with just Brenda? Next up are Sidian and Tasha. Sidian wants to go visit Ariel soon. Sidian and Ariel have dated long distance for several months. She lives in the Philippines and they haven't met in real life yet. Sidian says managing an online relationship is difficult, so he wants to meet Ariel in person. Tasha has been looking into it, but it's been difficult trying to get Ariel out of the country. And Tasha is worried Ariel will be denied leaving the country. Sidian and Ariel tried to meet before and it went badly. Sidian made it all the way to Costa Rica, but Ariel's flight was canceled due to COVID. Tasha says when the trips don't work out, it's not just the emotional burden on everyone involved, it's also a lot of tied up finances. Sidian tells Tasha they put all of their chips into that bet and it didn't work out. And now they have to reinvest in another trip. Sidian isn't feeling defeated just yet, but he's really hesitant about travel. What keeps Sidian motivated is that Ariel is the biggest catch. She could have anybody, and the fact that he and Ariel clicked so well makes Sidian think that when they finally get together, it will be perfect. Sidian and Tasha both think that it will be easier for Sidian to travel to go see Ariel since Ariel has been denied leaving the country so many times. Tasha is hoping maybe Sidian can visit Ariel for a month and come home for a month. She says, whatever it ends up looking like, there may be a few family trips in between. Tasha feels they have to make a trip happen because Ariel has invested so much. Every time something bad happens, Ariel doubles down and she proves her commitment, wanting to make this work. Tasha says Ariel is young and attractive and successful, and she is putting everything on hold to date Sidian, who she has never met, so it's important that Sidian goes on the trip because they know it's easier for Ariel to date someone closer to her who she could spend time with. Tasha says it's pretty easy for Ariel to drop them if she wanted. Next up are the Merrifields. Garrick and Leah are hanging out alone, going on a walk, and Garrick mentions Leah has questions about how things would work if she were a sister wife, so he wants to see what's going on and answer some of Leah's questions. Leah asks Garrick on a scale of 1 to 10 how much potential he thinks they have. Garrick doesn't know if he can scale it, but he can definitely say they all get along. Leah says she tends to be more direct with her questions when she is getting to know somebody because it's important to her to know what the relationship would look like, how it would feel, what the future with them would be like. She doesn't want to be negative, but she doesn't want to move too soon. Garrick says they are moving day by day, step by step. It takes a process. It takes time together. It takes care and patience. Leah asks Garrick if he has an ideal number of wives he wants to have or if he just wants to keep going. Garrick talked with Roberta and Danielle, and they both felt 5 wives would be the limit. And Leah asks, what if she says 6 wives? How does that go? She asks in general, in any situation, how do they balance how decisions are made? She asks if it's majority rules. Garrick says they talk as a family and that can be difficult at times. Leah asks, what if half the family feels God is telling us one thing and the other half feels God is telling them something else? Leah says in the beginning, Roberta felt God was telling her that she was not supposed to be with Garrick. And Garrick says, obviously, he is the husband, so he is leading in a sense, but yet the wives are there to help support and nurture him in going in the right direction. So Roberta is feeling insecure, but Danielle is saying, no, let's feel this out. We're connecting with Leah. We should move forward with this. And Garrick says, when you live in a polygamous lifestyle, there are a lot more things to consider. When you're adding somebody, you have to be thoughtful and make sure everybody is feeling the love and connection for each other and that they are all on the same page together. Leah asks Garrick if he feels like a good leader, and Garrick says yes. Leah says there are things they need to work through. She feels like the two other wives are more needy, and she has goals and ambitions. She wants to focus on school, on getting through nursing school, on getting into her career. So she thinks the two other wives would have to be really open to supporting any ambitions of any following wife coming into the family. Leah says that's very important for things to pan out. Back to the Epps family, Marcus has invited Bina over to the house so she can spend time with the ladies because Marcus would like to move forward with her. Marcus and Taryn have known Bina for over a decade, and India says she hasn't had the opportunity to meet Bina yet, so she thinks she will be the griller in this dynamic. She says this is their lives, this is their family, this is a great dynamic, and they aren't going to screw it up if someone just wants to come in for fun. India says they need to know the person coming in is just as serious as they are. Bina reflected after her date with Marcus, so coming into it, she wants to show her more serious side and be less playful because it's time to get real. Taryn asks Bina because of their prior relationship, since they have all been friends a long time, she wants to ask Marcus and Bina how the date was. Bina says it was weird having to look at Marcus in a different light. India asks Bina what made her want to date Marcus specifically. Bina says because she would never do this with anybody else. And India asks why. Marcus jokes, "It's me, for me." Bina says if the vibe wasn't amongst them, she wouldn't be open to it. But because the vibe is there and she feels in the event an issue arises, they could talk about it, Bina feels after 10 years plus a friendship, it's worth giving this a shot. India asks why this polygamous dynamic? Why not a monogamous relationship? Bina says because she has been cheated on all the time. Bina says either it happens in your face or you don't look at it as being cheated on. Taryn agrees because she says you know where Marcus is and who he is with. India says she doesn't think polygamy is the route one takes to not get cheated on. India thinks if that's the reason why you're going into the lifestyle, then maybe you aren't going into it with the best reason. India thinks the reason to join a polygamous relationship needs to be more than just not getting cheated on. I agree, obviously. That's exactly what I said last episode. Bina says she was more nervous at first because she didn't know how to take India yet. She was intimidating at first. Taryn tells Bina she has to get to know her, and once she does, India's cool. India says she is very guarded because Marcus is very trusting. He will tell somebody his entire life when he has known them for just 2 hours. And Taryn will say whatever Marcus wants. So India has to reel both Marcus and Taryn in because they are in La La Land. Bina asks India how she got like this. India asks like what? And Bina says obsessed. Is that the right word? Bina says India is obsessed. She is obsessed with Marcus. So she is thinking India should breathe. India thinks she has always been territorial. She has always been protective of her entire family because it's her family. India says she will always be looking side-eyed until she knows Bina is here legit for the reason that she says she is. India says she thinks it takes the right group of people to make polygamy work because it is challenging and it's much harder than a regular relationship. India is still apprehensive about Bina's true intentions and being able to take this seriously. Next up are the Merrifields. It's their last day with Leah, so they're having some brunch and talking things over to see where the relationship will go from here. Danielle thinks their first night with Leah ended well. Garrick says that he and Leah shared a nice kiss and Danielle fell asleep in Leah's lap while they chatted for quite a while. Garrick looks so ridiculous, by the way. He is in a cowboy hat and a leather vest. Danielle says Leah is asking a lot of tough questions, but there are a lot of things they both like about Leah. They aren't 100% sure yet about her, though. Leah says with Garrick, she wants to really get to know him before progressing and actually dating, because they are getting to know each other, but Garrick isn't really her boyfriend yet. Leah says there is so much to think about, so she has to be sure that the dynamic will work. Leah asks Garrick and Danielle how often they date women, and they say they don't really do that. Leah asks if it's a revolving door, and Garrick reveals the last person they dated was Roberta, and they haven't dated anyone since Roberta. Danielle asks Leah what happened in the plural relationship with her son's dad. Leah says they went to the same church and they started talking, and he told her what his situation was, and Leah met the woman that he was already with, and they clicked for a while. Leah feels like she was young, she was still partying a little bit, and she wasn't yet ready to settle down. Leah was with him for almost 3 years. Garrick says Leah has opened up about her living in the polygamous lifestyle before, and she has opened up about how it didn't work out. So it has Garrick a little concerned. And Danielle says it's a lot to think about. Why are these two acting like they are so versed in polygamy? The first polygamous relationship they ever had was with Roberta, and she is still not even in the US yet. Yet now Danielle and Garrick are experts concerned about Leah. Give me a break. Danielle says when she and Garrick got together, they were super young too. She was just 19 when they got married, so they went through hard times, having to grow and mature. Garrick is nervous and he doesn't know how things will proceed. Danielle says when the path is not clear, they pray about it and they wait on God to make that path clear. Danielle thinks if you just move of your own accord, you can make big mistakes in life. Leah says she is very excited and open to the idea of everything, but in the back of her mind, she's a little scared and nervous because she would be changing her life around completely just to get in this relationship. So she has to consider that to see how she will deal. She says, fingers crossed. Next up are Sidian and Tasha. Tasha is looking at flight options for Sidian, and they can afford it financially if just Sidian goes alone. And Tasha, luckily, has already met Ariel in person before. But it's been a hard decision because Tasha and the kids don't get to go meet Ariel with him. Sidian thinks regardless, him going is the right thing to do, because if not, he has a sick feeling that Ariel would say it's too much trouble for her. Sidian says the plan is to book a flight to the Philippines and get past immigration and COVID restrictions, and to be there with Ariel and to get to know her and to see if they click, and to potentially make Ariel a part of the family right then and there. Sidian and Tasha video chat with Ariel. Sidian wants to figure out some logistics on travel stuff. Sidian tells Ariel the new plan is him coming to the Philippines, and Ariel is happy with that. Sidian wants Ariel to help him book an Airbnb, and he wants her to decide on how many rooms she would like at the place. Tasha lets Ariel know Sidian was wondering if she wanted to share a room with him or if she wanted a separate room, and Ariel wants to share. Tasha feels comfortable with Sidian and Ariel having their sexual relationship and progressing it how they want. Tasha says she will miss him and it will be different and weird, but she will overcome it. Tasha just worries that Ariel will feel comfortable with her and Sidian's intimacy because Tasha already experienced that with their prior sister wife, and Ariel has never experienced a shared relationship like that. Tasha wants everything to work out, and Sidian is worried. He feels excited and engaged with the whole plan, but when Ariel is no longer on screen, he starts worrying about the stress of making it all happen. Sidian explains to Tasha he gets excited when talking to Ariel and during their video calls. Then when they are off the call, he dreads being excited about it. Sidian says it makes it harder if a disappointment happens or just the potential of a disappointment. Next up are the Foleys. Steve, Brenda, and April are out to eat. Steve says tonight they are having a conversation with April about how they feel regarding April's communication needing improvement. Steve is nervous because this is their first serious conversation where they sit down and address a real serious issue. Brenda knows they need to talk about it. She knows the more she keeps it in, the more things could just escalate. Steve announces that there are things he needs to talk about and he wants to do it up front so they can enjoy it over the margaritas. So maybe the margaritas will help. April is feeling nervous because she doesn't know what to expect. Brenda says it's the whole communication between herself and April. Brenda says she tries to make April feel comfortable and she feels after 5 months they should be closer and she doesn't feel that closeness at all with April. Brenda says April and Steve are always talking on the phone and Steve never tells her, I'm on the phone with April, want to talk to her? And April never also asks when she is on the phone with Steve if she can say hi to Brenda. Brenda says she isn't even a thought. Brenda tells April she feels she doesn't mean anything to her. April says on some level she isn't surprised because she could just feel that there was something Brenda was feeling, but she doesn't know what Brenda needs exactly. Brenda tells April she doesn't want to feel left out and she doesn't want to feel alone because that's how she feels with them right now. April tells Brenda she can see how Brenda feels that way because she does know her communication is not her best skill. April tells Steve and Brenda she isn't really sure what they are expecting from her, but Steve has made it more clear as far as communication, she would say. April says that Steve is better at expressing what he needs as far as communication, where Brenda is more reserved, not wanting to push April or force her into anything. But April feels she needs that push. And Brenda tells April she thought she made it clear to her before that she is looking for something more than best friends. She wants somebody she can depend on, like a sister, and she doesn't feel like April needs her. Brenda feels April thinks she is cool to hang out with, but when she needs something more, she only goes to Steve. Brenda says she likes to take care of people in any relationship, whether it's her family or friends or coworkers. She cares a lot. She can be there for others and make them feel better in any way, shape, or form. Brenda says she needs to feel like she is needed, and if she doesn't feel that from April, she feels like she doesn't bring anything. Brenda feels like she is giving too much of herself, and she is at the point where she doesn't want to anymore. April says this whole type of relationship is new to her. Even just serious relationships in general are new to her. So having two different people with two different sets of needs, it gets even harder. April says if she and Brenda aren't working out, then a relationship with Steve wouldn't be possible. Steve tells April, don't be afraid to say something. He says in this relationship where they are at right now, he asks April, do you need Brenda? April says, well, okay, so she asks, when you say, do I need Brenda, do you mean in the relationship itself? April says they get along. She feels like with Brenda, it could be more, but she hasn't been ready to open up. She hasn't been pushed to open up more with Brenda in the same way that Steve has pushed her to open up with him. Steve says when he asked April if she needs Brenda, he was expecting, hey, April, here's a softball on the tee. Just say yes, I need Brenda. That was it. Steve says he was desperately trying to get them to connect with what the issue is with Brenda, and it was tough. Steve asks Brenda how she is feeling, and she is feeling no different. Brenda says it's more upsetting than helpful. Brenda feels she is at a point where she is already in the process of shutting down. Brenda feels April isn't understanding, and it's a lot of excuses she is hearing. Steve says April is moving slower than what he would hope for she and Brenda's relationship. Brenda says when Steve asked April if she needs her, there was a pause as if April is wondering, do I need Brenda? Do I not need her? Brenda tells April she doesn't feel happy with the relationship. Steve says where it stands right now, he would probably say it's at the worst place that it could be. Steve never wants Brenda to be hurting, but at the same time, he sees in April this desire for this to work because he can tell how April feels about Brenda and how April feels about him. Steve says Brenda has that emotional disconnect right now with April, and he's afraid that could end the relationship. Next time on Seeking Sister Wife, the Davises, Nick, April, Jennifer, and Danielle are going off on a weekend staycation. Danielle says she spent more than 24 hours with other people and she is going bonkers. April says this may be too much for Danielle. Sidian bids adieu to Tasha. He's heading to go see Ariel in the Philippines. He says they have a lot riding on this trip to go see Ariel, and Sidian says he has this sick feeling that it could all not work out. India and Taryn are out with friends, and her friend asks, "So who is out to find a sister wife? Is it all three of you guys?" India explains, Marcus actively goes out and fishes. Another friend asks what they're doing. She says it's not a normal way to live. Steve tells his son and daughter that he and Brenda have started actively looking for someone to add to the family. Steve says there's a rough patch with April right now, but they want to talk with the kids about the fact that they have started looking to expand their family with another sister wife. Steve's daughter asks, what if Brenda wants to bring another husband or boyfriend? She says she genuinely thinks her dad's lifestyle is disgusting. Good for her for saying how she feels and sticking up for Brenda. I really feel for Brenda because I think although Brenda met Steve when he was first married and his wife left, she doesn't want to be in a polygamous situation. And Steve wants the variety. He may even want more kids. And Brenda loves Steve and she doesn't want to lose him. So she consoles herself with wanting a sister wife to be like a sister wife as close to Steve as they are to her. When that will never happen. They will always be closer to Steve. And in reality, she probably just wants monogamy with Steve, but she probably thinks Steve might leave her or cheat on her if she doesn't tolerate polygamy. I feel for Brenda because to me it looks like this might cause her to become depressed, and I don't think it's fair of Steve. Anyways, that does it for this episode of Seeking Sister or Wife. To my YouTube viewers, please like and subscribe, and as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment box. Thanks so much for watching. I'll be back later this week for the next episode of my Sister Wives Rewatch, Season 2, Episode 10, Gambling on the Future, and either the next episode of Book Club or Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. We'll see. See you guys soon. Bye.